Welcome back to Beyond the Unknown, where we like to take a deep dive into some of the sources that you send our way. I'm Alex Carter,
And I'm Olivia Reyes.
and today we are tackling episode 14. And this one is a question that's sending shockwaves through the tech world. And the question is the rise of GPT search, the Google search killer. And we dug into a report on this very topic, and I gotta say the answer is a little more complicated than just a yes or no.
It is, yeah. This report is really interesting. It pulls back the curtain on the strategies of both OpenAI and Google. It kind of reads like a detective story in a way, uncovering how their different approaches to AI development are playing out in the world of search engines.
Yeah, so let's set the stage here. The report starts by laying out how OpenAI's ChatGPT search is really making waves. We're talking about integrating real-time web data directly into ChatGPT so you can have these conversational queries and they come complete with cited sources.
It really is like having a super powered research assistant right there in your chat window.
Exactly. And what's so fascinating is how this contrasts with Google's traditional approach to search, right? Google gives you that familiar list of blue links.
Yeah.
It's very static. ChatGPT search, on the other hand, it's dynamic, it's interactive.
It's no wonder people are finding it so refreshing.
I know. When I first tried it, it was kind of mind-blowing.
Me too. It really felt like I was talking to like a knowledgeable friend who also had access to the entire internet. It was amazing. But here's where the report takes a really interesting turn. It dives into this tale of two strategies, comparing the paths taken by OpenAI and Google in the world of AI. And it's really a story of bold risks and what might be some pretty significant missed opportunities.
Yeah. And one thing that really surprised me was learning that Google actually had a pretty big head start in AI. They were pioneers in machine learning with projects like Google Translate and TensorFlow, which is their open source platform for developing AI models.
Oh, yeah. I remember when Google Translate first came out, it was like pure magic. Suddenly you could understand web pages in languages you never even studied. It felt like the future had arrived. Totally. But, connecting that back to the bigger picture, Google's approach to AI implementation seemed to be mostly focused on enhancing their existing products. They were making these incremental improvements, but not necessarily thinking about, truly disruptive applications.
And that's where OpenAI enters the picture, right? They just kind of came out of nowhere with this mission to develop artificial general intelligence, or AGI, for the benefit of all humanity.
Right. And their approach was like radically different from Google's. With models like GPT-2 and GPT-3, OpenAI embraced this very open approach, letting the public interact with these really powerful language models and even contribute to their development.
Now, for those listeners who might not be familiar with AGI, AGI is essentially the idea of creating AI that has the same general intelligence capabilities as a human being, which is a pretty ambitious goal, to say the least.
It is. But while some people were skeptical of OpenAI's open approach, warning about the potential risks, the report actually argues that this openness was really key to their success. Think about it. By allowing public interaction, they were able to gather this massive amount of real-world data, which helped them refine their models at an incredible pace.
Yeah, it's like that classic Silicon Valley mantra, move fast and break things. But in this case, instead of breaking things, they were making them better faster than anyone thought possible.
Exactly. And this leads us to what I think is a pretty provocative section of the report where they focus on what they call Google's missteps.
Ooh, this is where the drama starts to unfold.
Yeah, well, the report doesn't really mince words. It claims that Google's public stance on AI, emphasizing caution, ethical considerations, and the potential for misuse might not have been the whole story.
Hold on, so you're saying the report is implying that Google wasn't being entirely transparent about their AI capabilities?
That's what it seems to suggest. They had the technology to do some really groundbreaking things to revolutionize products like Google Maps and Google Assistant. But they chose a much slower, more measured rollout, focusing on those incremental updates rather than disruptive innovation.
So while OpenAI was iterating in public learning from every interaction and pushing the boundaries of what AI could do, Google was holding back. The report seems to suggest that their caution wasn't entirely altruistic, that maybe profit motives were playing a role.
Yeah, it seems like they might have been protecting their existing business model instead of embracing the potential for really radical change.
And what's so interesting is that Google had actually developed models that were similar to GPT-3, but they chose to keep them under wraps. While OpenAI was out there gathering all this valuable data from public interaction, Google was playing it safe, watching from the sidelines as OpenAI's star began to rise.
It must have been tough for a company like Google to watch that happen. They were used to being the undisputed leader in innovation. Suddenly they found themselves playing catch-up to a company they might have underestimated.
It's like a classic David versus Goliath story, but with this fascinating AI twist. And as we'll see in the next part of our deep dive, the implications of this shift in power are only just beginning to be felt.
So before we went to the break, we were talking about how Google seemed to be taking this much more cautious approach to AI, compared to OpenAI.
Right, and it's interesting because this report seems to be kind of suggesting that maybe this hesitation wasn't purely driven by, ethical concerns. Like there's a hint that maybe profit motives were playing a role there.
Right. It makes you wonder if this is part of like a larger trend we're seeing in the tech world. Are these smaller, more agile companies like OpenAI, are they starting to challenge the dominance of these big tech giants?
A good question. It really does feel like we're seeing this like changing of the guard happening right now. The old way of doing things, where these huge companies control everything, it might be on its way out.
And if that's true, it's kind of exciting, but also a little bit unsettling, right? Like, on the one hand, you have this wave of innovation coming from these smaller players who are willing to take risks and really push the envelope. But what happens when they become the new giants? Can they maintain that same, spirit of innovation?
It's the million-dollar question.
Hmm.
History kind of shows us that it's hard for companies to stay nimble and innovative as they grow,
Mm-hmm.
but maybe OpenAI will be different. Maybe they'll find a way to keep that like scrappy startup mentality even as they become this major force in the tech world.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to wait and see. But for now, it's pretty amazing to see how they're shaking things up. So, getting back to the report, it goes on to discuss some of the broader implications of this whole shift towards AI-driven search. And one of the biggest concerns it raises is the potential impact on jobs.
Yeah, that's something that a lot of people are worried about. And it's not just, blue-collar jobs that are at risk. AI is starting to make inroads into white-collar professions too. Like we're talking law, medicine, even journalism.
Right, and that raises this whole question about the future of work. Like, what happens when AI can perform many of the tasks that humans currently do? It's not just about job displacement. It's about reskilling and adapting to a world where AI is more of a collaborator and not just a tool.
Yeah, it's like we need to start thinking about AI as a partner, something that can help us, augment our capabilities and solve problems in new and creative ways.
Exactly. And the report actually talks about how this shift is going to require a pretty fundamental change in how we approach education and training. We need to start equipping people with the skills they need to thrive in this new AI-powered world.
Yeah. So we need to move beyond just teaching people how to use technology and start teaching them how to think critically about it, how to understand its limitations, and how to use it ethically and responsibly.
It's not just about the technical skills anymore. It's about developing a deeper understanding of AI and how it's going to impact society.
Yeah.
And that requires a shift in mindset, a willingness to embrace lifelong learning and constantly adapt to new technologies and new ways of working.
And that kind of ties in with what we do here on Beyond the Unknown, right? We're all about exploring new ideas, challenging assumptions, and encouraging our listeners to be curious and engaged with the world around them.
Exactly. And as AI becomes more integrated into our lives, I think it's more important than ever to have that spirit of inquiry and critical thinking. We need to be able to ask the tough questions, evaluate information carefully, and make informed decisions about how we want AI to shape our future.
And the report doesn't shy away from some of the, darker potential consequences either. It talks about how AI could be used to manipulate people, spread misinformation, or even make existing social inequalities worse.
Yeah, those are definitely some serious concerns. And I think it's really important that we're having these conversations now while AI is still relatively early in its development. We need to be thinking about how to mitigate those risks and make sure that AI is used for good.
That brings us back to this fundamental question that the report keeps coming back to. Is ChatGPT a Google search killer, or is it something else entirely?
I mean, it's clear that ChatGPT is definitely disrupting the search landscape in a big way. It's forcing Google to rethink its approach and innovate in ways that it hasn't had to in years. But maybe instead of looking at it as this battle for supremacy, we should see it as an opportunity for growth and evolution for the whole tech industry.
Yeah, maybe this competition will lead to better products, more choices for users, and a more dynamic and innovative tech landscape overall. And in the end, wouldn't that be a win for everyone?
I think so. It's a really fascinating time to be following these developments, and I'm excited to see where it all leads as AI continues to evolve.
Okay, so we've been unpacking this report, right? Looking at the rise of AI-powered search and the battle between OpenAI and Google. But, as we get to the end of our deep dive here, the report leaves us with this one last, thought-provoking question.
Mhm.
Is ChatGPT really a Google search killer?
Yeah, I feel like that's the question on everyone's mind these days. I mean, ChatGPT is definitely a game changer, right? It's changing how we interact with tech and how we access info in pretty fundamental ways.
I've got to say, I've been using ChatGPT for research more and more myself lately.
Yeah.
It's just so much faster and easier to get the info you need. It feels so much more natural than using a regular search engine.
I think a lot of people are feeling that way. A lot of people are saying that ChatGPT search is like a breath of fresh air compared to those traditional search engines.
Hmm.
But the report challenges us to consider like a more nuanced perspective.
Okay, I'm all ears. Give me a nuanced take.
So instead of thinking about it as this, fight to the death, right?
Right.
What if we look at ChatGPT as a catalyst for change? Like, what if it's actually pushing Google to evolve in ways that they wouldn't have otherwise?
So not a killer, but a disruptor. A force that's shaking things up and making the old guard like adapter die.
Exactly right. Like, Google has been the king of search for so long that they haven't really had to push the boundaries of innovation that much.
Yeah, they've been sitting pretty at the top of that mountain. Maybe they got a little too comfortable up there.
Right. Exactly. And now with ChatGPT coming in hot, Google's got to rethink things. They have to start innovating, experiment, and really listening to what users actually want.
So that raises the question, could this competition actually be a good thing for the future of search?
Well, the report seems to think so. It argues that competition usually leads to better products, more choices for users, and a more dynamic and innovative tech landscape. And that's good for everyone in the end.
I can see that. If Google's forced to step up their game, create a better search experience, that's a win for all of us.
Exactly. It's like that saying, a rising tide lifts all boats.
Right. ChatGPT might not be a killer, but it's a wake-up call, that's for sure.
Definitely. And the report ends on this really interesting note. What if instead of being afraid of disruption, we saw it as an opportunity for growth, an opportunity for progress?
It's a powerful idea. We're living in a time of incredible technological change, and AI is at the forefront of it all. It's up to us to decide how we're going to navigate this new landscape.
And remember, technology is a tool. It can be used for good or for bad. The choices we make today are going to shape the future.
Well said. Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the rise of GPT search.
We covered a lot of ground today: the history, the key players, the potential benefits and the risks.
But ultimately, the future of search, like the future of AI itself, is still being written.
And that's what makes this such an exciting time to be alive.
Absolutely. We want to thank you, our listeners, for joining us on this journey. We hope you learned something new, that you were challenged to think critically, and that you're as excited as we are about all the possibilities that are out there.
And until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
This is Beyond the Unknown, signing off.